Imagine hiding under a stranger's bed in the pitch black. You're terrified out of your mind, trying not to breathe, only to bump into another man who's already hiding there.
Right. Just an incredibly awkward, terrifying moment.
Exactly. So today, we are exploring the ridiculous, the pathetic, and, well, the deeply tragic extremes of human loneliness. Welcome to this deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Our mission today is to unpack the architecture of human isolation, and we're doing it through a highly specific, totally fascinating lens. We are looking at a Turkish edition of Fyodor Dostoevsky's work.
Yeah, specifically the one published by İş Bankası Kültür Yayınları in 2014 and then reprinted in 2020.
Right. Translated by Buddy Sarin.
And before we even get into the psychology of the characters themselves, we really need to look at the psychological framing of this specific volume.
Oh, the preface.
Yes. It opens with this preface written in 1941 by Hasan Ali Yücel. He was the Turkish Minister of Education at the time. And he makes this really profound argument about the mechanics of empathy.
Empathy through translation, basically.
Yeah, exactly. He posits that literature is the richest, most concrete expression of the human spirit, and that translating world literature isn't just, some academic exercise.
Okay, let's unpack this, because 1941 is a time when the physical borders of the world were violently closing. I mean, World War II is raging.
Oh, absolutely.
So why is a minister of education prioritizing the translation of 19th century Russian literature of all things?
Well, because he believed that when a nation translates world masterpieces into its own language, it actively elevates its own collective intelligence, like its capacity for understanding.
By recreating a foreign masterpiece in your native tongue, you're essentially dismantling the boundaries of time and geography.
You really are. You are proving that human suffering, jealousy, longing, they're all universal. Hasan Ali Yücel literally saw translation as the ultimate cure for cultural isolation.
That is a phenomenal transition point.
Yeah.
Because if translation is the cure for cultural isolation, the two stories we're looking at in this volume are absolute masterclasses in personal psychological isolation.
Oh, totally.
We're looking at White Nights, or Beyaz Gessler in Turkish, and Another Man's Wife and a Husband Under the Bed, or Başkasının Karısı ve Yatağın Altındaki Koku.
We are going to swing wildly today, from poetic, heartbreaking melancholy to just sheer slapstick absurdity.
Let's start with the melancholy. Dostoevsky places us in 19th century St. Petersburg. Spring is arriving, the city is thawing, but, and here's the catch, we experience it entirely through the warped perspective of our unnamed narrator.
Right, our protagonist. He's 26 years old, he has lived in this vibrant, bustling city for 8 years, and he does not have a single friend.
Not one. But he isn't just sitting in a room staring at a wall all day. He is out in the city every day walking around.
Yeah, he walks endlessly.
It's just that instead of forming relationships with actual human beings, he forms these intense unilateral attachments to the city itself. Like he recognizes people on the street. There's this one old man who always carries a gold-knobbed cane and mutters to himself.
But he never speaks to him.
Never. He simply assigns them whole personalities in his head.
And he does this with the architecture too, which is wild. He projects human emotions onto bricks and mortar because, well, buildings can't reject him.
There is this one detail that just perfectly illustrates how fragile his reality really is. He has a favorite building, right?
The pink house.
Yes. This charming light pink house that he genuinely feels looks at him affectionately as he walks by, like they're friends.
Right.
And one day, he discovers a builder is painting it empire yellow, like the color of a canary. And he doesn't just register this as, oh, a cosmetic change. He feels deeply, genuinely betrayed by the house.
It's a fascinating display of anthropomorphism. When an individual is subjected to that level of extreme social starvation, the brain still demands connection.
It has to have it.
Exactly. If it can't find it in people, it will literally manufacture it in inanimate objects.
And that brings up a modern parallel I just can't shake. I was thinking about this. Is this 19th century dreamer essentially the ultimate chronically online person?
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it.
I mean, think about the mechanism here. If St. Petersburg is his internet forum, the old man with the cane is just a recurring avatar on his timeline.
Right, someone he lurks on.
Exactly. He scrolls past him every day, assigns him a whole backstory, but never interacts. And that pink house, that's his favorite website layout.
Oh, I see where you're going.
When it updates to Empire Yellow, he reacts with the exact same disproportionate outrage you see when a social media platform forces a new user interface on everyone.
That makes perfect sense.
He is living a completely frictionless, curated reality in his head because real, messy human interaction requires vulnerability, which is terrifying.
What's fascinating here is how self-aware the narrator actually is about this whole condition. I mean, he actively defines himself as a dreamer.
He owns the label.
He does. And he uses this brilliant biological metaphor, comparing his existence to a snail or a turtle that carries its house on its back, just retreating into its shell at the very first sign of reality.
Just totally hiding away.
Yeah. He spends his days in a dingy, smoke-stained room, attended only by his elderly, neglectful maid, Matryona.
And what is he actually doing in that room? He's running simulations in his head. He imagines going on grand adventures, like marrying a Chinese prince or becoming best friends with the author E.T.A. Hoffman.
Exactly. But fantasies provide no real nourishment. He admits that when the imaginary adventures inevitably end, he is left with this crushing, hollow realization that he is consuming his own youth.
It's so sad.
He is cannibalizing his own potential.
Until finally the shell cracks. He's on one of his late-night walks, like 10 p.m. by a canal. He's singing to himself when he spots a young woman.
Nastenka.
Right. She is wearing a yellow hat and a black mantle, leaning against the canal railing, just sobbing.
This is the critical breach in his system, a real human being in actual distress.
And his first instinct is to flee. I mean, he's terrified of women. But then this drunk, staggering man in a tailcoat starts harassing her.
So he has to act.
Yeah, our dreamer happens to be holding a heavy, knotted walking stick. So he steps in, the trunk backs off. Yeah. And in the aftermath of this massive adrenaline rush, the dreamer just completely short-circuits.
He really does.
He word vomits his entire soul to her on the street, confessing that he has literally never spoken to a woman in his life.
Which, counterintuitively, makes him completely safe to her. Nastenka realizes he isn't a predator at all, he's just incredibly fragile.
Right.
So she offers him her friendship and trust, but she sets a very strict boundary right away. She says, "You cannot fall in love with me."
And I would argue she sets that boundary because her own capacity for connection has been severely traumatized. We really have to talk about Nastenka's backstory.
Oh, he is a lot.
Because it is an absolute psychological pressure cooker. She is 17, she's an orphan, and she lives with her blind grandmother. But the grandmother doesn't just supervise her.
No, it's way more intense than that.
She literally takes a physical pin and pins Nastenka's dress to her own dress.
It is the literal physical manifestation of confinement. Nastenka just sits there, pinned to a blind woman, day in and day out, knitting and reading aloud.
Let's analyze the mechanics of that one escape she attempts, because it is wild. Nastenka convinces their deaf maid Thekla to sit in her chair and take the pin.
A literal bait and switch.
Right, so Nastenka sneaks out, but the blind grandmother, totally unaware of the swap, asks a question. Thekla, being deaf, obviously doesn't answer.
So the grandmother gets agitated.
Which panics Thekla, who just violently rips the pin out and flees the room. So Nastenka returns to find absolute chaos and is punished by being pinned even more strictly than before.
It's this moment of dark domestic tragedy. But psychologically, just consider what this environment does to a teenager.
It's suffocating.
When your physical reality is that restricted, your mind becomes hypersusceptible to escapism.
Which arrives in the very handsome form of a new lodger moving into the attic, a young man from out of town, and he brings her books.
Highly romanticized adventurous fiction, specifically.
Exactly. Works by Pushkin and Walter Scott. Like Ivanhoe. He even convinces the grandmother to let him take them to the opera to see The Barber of Seville.
He feeds her imagination just as the dreamer feeds his own in his dingy room.
Right. But then the lodger announces he must leave for Moscow for a year to settle his affairs. Nastenka is so desperate she packs a bundle, sneaks up to his room, and basically throws herself at him, begging to go with him.
She wants an out.
Hold on, let me stop you there. I want you, the listener, to really evaluate Nastenka's motivation here. Put yourself in her shoes. You've been pinned to a blind woman for years. Your only taste of the outside world comes from Walter Scott novels.
Escapist fantasies.
Right. Isn't this lodger just a real-life Ivanhoe to her? I have to ask, is she actually in love with this man, or is she just in love with the idea of a plot twist in her own static life?
Wow.
She needs a narrative escape hatch.
That is the essential ambiguity Dostoevsky operates in. Then the lodger himself seems to recognize this volatility in her. He handles her very carefully.
He does.
He explains he is too poor to marry her right then, but he promises to return in exactly 1 year. If she still wants him, they will marry. Crucially, though, he frees her from any binding promise.
So, fast forward to the present. The year is up. Nastenka is sobbing by the canal because she knows the lodger has been back in St. Petersburg for 3 days and he hasn't contacted her.
Not a word.
The dreamer, who has been spending these white nights with her, steps into the role of the noble friend. He even helps her write a letter to the lodger. But when another night passes with no reply, Nastenka completely shatters.
And this is where the dreamer's containment protocol fails. Seeing her in this much agony, he breaks his promise, he confesses his love.
He can't hold it in anymore.
He lays his financial reality bare. He admits he only earns a meager 1,200 rubles a year, but he promises to dedicate his entire life to her.
And the emotional whiplash here is staggering. Nastenka pivots on a dime. She says yes.
Just like that.
She agrees to marry the dreamer. They instantly start building a shared fantasy right there on the street. They figure out how to move the grandmother into his apartment, how they'll rent out the attic, how they'll go see the barber of Seville.
For the first time, the dreamer isn't simulating a life. He is standing on the precipice of a real one.
But reality is notoriously indifferent to our fantasies, because as they are walking under the clouds and the moon, a man approaches them.
That's the lodger.
It is. Nastenka freezes. She rips herself away from the dreamer, throws her arms around the lodger's neck, kisses the dreamer once, like a quick goodbye, and then sprints into the night with the other man,
Leaving the dreamer entirely untethered. And the climax of the story isn't actually the betrayal, it's the aftermath.
the morning after.
Exactly. The white nights, which symbolize this luminous, suspended state of dreaming, end. The next morning, it is raining. The dreamer looks around his room, and it looks older.
Reality setting back in.
The spiderwebs are thicker. Matriona looks ancient. The illusion is gone, and the physical decay of his isolated life is undeniable.
Then he receives a letter from Nastenka begging for forgiveness. And the absolute tragedy of the dreamer archetype is cemented in his reaction. He doesn't burn the letter.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't curse her name. He blesses her. He actually finds sustenance in the fact that for one fleeting moment, he experienced absolute, pure happiness.
He concludes that a single moment of real life is enough to sustain a man for the rest of his days. It is a profoundly noble, if deeply, deeply sad rationalization of his return to the shell.
Which makes our transition to the second story in this translation so jarring. I mean, if White Nights explores how isolation turns a man into a tragic poet, Another Man's Wife and a Husband Under the Bed explores how isolation turns a man into an absolute clown.
It requires a massive shift in intellectual gears to go from one to the other. Dostoevsky intentionally pairs tragedy with farce here to demonstrate that our psychological defense mechanisms aren't always poetic. Sometimes they are just pathetic.
Let's jump right into the action. We open in the fog at 8 p.m. on a St. Petersburg street. A frantic man in a heavy raccoon coat, Ivan Andreevich, violently accosts a younger man in a regular coat, Tvorogov.
Right out on the street.
Ivan is demanding information about a woman.
He is operating in a state of pure paranoid delirium.
And the dialogue is incredibly sharp. Ivan insists he is looking for a woman in a fox fur cape and a dark velvet bonnet. Tvorogov arrogantly dismisses him, saying no, he is looking for a woman in a plaid coat and a blue velvet hat.
They're just talking past each other.
They argue aggressively for minutes before the terrible realization finally dawns on them. They are standing outside the same building waiting for the exact same woman, Glafira Petrovna.
Ivan is the husband. Tvorogov is the lover who has just realized he isn't the only lover.
Because when Glafira finally exits the building, she is on the arm of a third man, Babinitsyn. Glafira sees her husband, Ivan, waiting in the street, and without missing a beat, she manufactures a staggering lie.
It's so bold.
She tells Ivan she was in a carriage, the horses bolted, she was thrown into the street, and this young man standing right here, Mosio Tvorogov, who was practically vibrating with rage, miraculously saved her.
And Ivan accepts this explanation. He literally shakes his rival's hand, gets in the carriage with his wife, and leaves.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because I don't buy that for a second. Ivan is deeply paranoid. He knows she's lying. Tvorogov knows she's lying.
Everyone knows.
Why does Ivan play along?
Yeah.
Why does he accept such a humiliating, completely transparent fabrication?
Well, because of cognitive dissonance and the desperate protection of the ego. To call her a liar in the middle of the street is to admit to the public and to himself that he is a cuckold.
Right.
By accepting the lie, he maintains the external structure of his marriage. Ivan's isolation isn't physical like the dreamer's. Ivan is isolated from the truth. He prefers a comfortable humiliation to a destructive reality.
But the ego can only suppress paranoia for so long. The next night, Ivan is at the Italian opera, Normally, Ivan is that grumpy guy who sleeps through the entire performance.
Oh yeah, he hates it.
He called the prima donna a meowing white cat.
But tonight, the cognitive dissonance is cracking. He is hypervigilant, scanning the balconies, entirely consumed by the suspicion that his wife is orchestrating another affair right under his nose.
And then, the inciting incident literally falls from the sky. A perfumed love note drops from an upper box and lands smack on Ivan's bald head.
You can't make it up.
It contains an address for a secret rendezvous,
Yeah.
the K building on Jiva Street. Ivan immediately assumes this note was intended for his wife's new lover, and he decides to play detective.
He is driven by a need to reclaim his dominance, to catch her in the act and finally assert himself as the aggrieved, righteous husband.
So Ivan rushes to the address. He sneaks into the dark apartment, heart pounding, ready to bust down the door of infidelity. But then he hears heavy, coughing footsteps.
It's the actual owner of the apartment.
An elderly husband named Alexander Demyanovich. Ivan's righteous courage vanishes instantly. To avoid being caught trespassing, he just dives under the bed.
The irony is magnificent. The man who entered the building to uncover hidden secrets is now forced to become one himself, hiding on a dusty floor.
And it gets better. He bumps into something in the dark. He reaches out and realizes there is another young man already hiding under this exact same bed.
This is where Dostoevsky's genius for absurd theatricality just shines.
It is pure sitcom chaos. They are squished together in this tiny space, furiously whispering and bickering. The young man is livid that Ivan is compromising his hiding spot.
Naturally.
And the auditory contrast in this scene is brilliant. Above the bed, the old husband, Alexander, sits down and starts complaining to his wife. But he isn't interrogating her about lovers.
No, he's talking about his health.
He is complaining about his back pain, his gout, and his hemorrhoids. He spends an eternity debating whether drinking yarrow tea savan prasemi is a better medical treatment than applying leeches.
Exactly. Dostoevsky splits the reality of marriage into two planes here. Above the bed, you have the mundane, decaying bodily reality of a long-term partnership.
It's so boring and real.
And below the bed, you have the frantic, undignified, manufactured drama of jealousy and ego.
The tension finally breaks when the wife's pet dog, a little lapdog named Amishka, catches the scent of the men. Amishka runs over and starts barking frantically at the space where Ivan is hiding.
And the totally oblivious husband above assumes it's just their cat, Vaska, sneezing from a cold.
But Ivan is pushed to his absolute psychological limit. His fear of public embarrassment is so overpowering that he reaches out, grabs the little lapdog, and literally strangles it to death under the bed, just to keep it quiet.
It is shocking, but it perfectly illustrates the mechanism of his character. Ivan will destroy an innocent creature. He will destroy anything just to protect his own bruised ego from being exposed to the light.
But the dead dog doesn't even save him. Alexander eventually looks down and spots Ivan's boot sticking out. In the ensuing confusion, the other young man scrambles out and escapes the apartment completely unseen.
Leaving Ivan to take the fall.
Ivan is dragged out from under the bed, covered in dust, lying next to a strangled dog, and his defense mechanism kicks in one last time. He pathetically tries to claim he is just a childhood friend of the family who got confused looking for a different apartment.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you can see exactly why these two stories belong in the same volume. Dostoevsky's presenting us with two inverted mirrors of isolation.
How so?
Well, the dreamer isolates himself because he has an excess of soul. He builds a poetic fantasy to protect his heart from the friction of reality. Ivan Andreevich, on the other hand, isolates himself because he has an excess of ego.
Ah, right.
He builds a paranoid nightmare world to protect his pride and ends up literally crawling on the floor, fighting for space under a stranger's bed, entirely stripped of his dignity.
So what does this all mean for us? Bringing it back to Hasan Ali Yusel's Mission of Translation from 1941. These stories, brought to us via this 2014 Turkish text, map out the vast, incredibly uncomfortable spectrum of human desire and loneliness.
They really do.
Whether you are the noble dreamer standing in the rain, blessing the woman who broke your heart, or the frantic husband in a raccoon coat suffocating a lapdog to avoid an awkward conversation, we are all just employing different strategies to navigate the terrifying vulnerability of human connection.
And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over regarding that vulnerability. Returning to Nastenka's farewell letter in White Nights.
Oh, the letter?
Yeah. In her letter, she doesn't just ask for the dreamer's forgiveness. She explicitly begs him not to leave her life. She asks him to visit her and the lodger, to love them both, and to be a quote-unquote brother to them.
Oof.
We tend to view Nastenka as a victim of her circumstances. But consider this. Is her request a sign of a pure, innocent heart that simply wants to keep a friend?
Or?
Or is asking the man who just bared his soul to you, who is desperately in love with you, to come over and play third reel to your new marriage actually the cruelest, most selfish act of psychological torture in the entire book? Think about the underlying mechanics of that request the next time someone offers you just friendship.
Does she want a brother? Or does she just want to keep an emotional backup generator running that completely recontextualizes the ending? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep seeking out great sources, keep examining the architecture of your own isolation, and we will see you next time.